Okay, so now we are going to move to from industry to RTOs and academics. And well, I think that it was touched already a bit during the previous presentation, how to manage data and to speak with a common language is key. Really connecting all these data coming from different sources in different format. Also, all the validation aspect of data is key. And I'm very happy to have with us today Dr. Ivano Castelli, who is one of well, we are partnering in the Big Map project. Maybe you heard about this one, which is a flagship project on material acceleration platform in the field of batteries. And Dr. Castelli, who is working at the Danish Technical University, is really one of the, let's say, key persons in all the definition of how really all these ontologies aspect on data for batteries research and innovation activities. So I think it's as you will see, I think it's really key to speak the same language. It's quite obvious, but how to reach this is not that easy. And again, we are facing an issue with the sharing of the screen.
This is an issue.
Duplicate it.
It was not DTU according to the schedule, but I don't know if it's very relevant.
Hmm?
Yes.
Oh. Apparently, I switched between, but sorry, it was in. I'm not relying on the official agenda in my. Sorry for that, but I think in any case, I think it's well, no, it will be interesting to have both of you, whether it's you first or the second. I think it's not so important. So sorry for that. It's my fault. So Ivano, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me here. So what I'm going to show you in the next 20 minutes is a bit of the approach that we are taking with Big Map on verification of data, and more in general, how do we deal with data flow in such a large project. But if I can change, yes. Let me tell you a little bit more about Big Map. So Big Map is a European funded project of around 20 million euros that is focusing on accelerating the battery research. And this is mostly done through different levels, from modeling, experiments, AI, and sort of creating a data infrastructure. It's 34 partners from academia, research organization, large-scale facilities, industry, and so on and so forth. And you can see that it's covering quite a large size of part of Europe. I can say there is some leaflet here where you can read a bit more about the Big Map, so I'm not gonna in the details there. I can tell you what is our vision. So our vision is create an accelerated closed loop discovery using AI accelerated models and procedures. So in order to achieve the ambitious goals of like a sustainable future, we cannot wait for 5 to 10 years to have new technologies. We need to find a way to disrupt the discoveries, and that's why what we are trying to do is embedding AI models into our research. And Big Map is composed of Big and Map. So what is Big? So it's mainly understanding and controlling the interface. So as you know, batteries is works, or the importance of the interface in battery is crucial, and it's something that we don't know very much about. So we need to find a way to investigate that in a more sustainable way, in an accelerated way, in a more precise way. And then we will use data and AI models to try to understand the physics behind these at the interface level. And then there is the map that is materials acceleration platform and is a sort of AI orchestrated discovery process. So we want to enable data acquisition. We want to enable to use this data to create models and so on. This is, as you know, battery is not only one scale, so it has to cross different scales. That means that we are actually increasing the difficulty there. So if we look at the organization of the project, we have something like this. I guess I can use my mouse. So we have some more conventional work packages where we work more on modeling and different levels of characterization and synthesis. We have a robotics synthesis. We have characterization, high throughput screening. And then there is the central part that is what is infrastructure, standard operating procedure, and ontology. And I'm going to go back there because this is what actually I'm going to cover during this talk. And then through the infrastructure, then we feed the more AI-based work packages. And then sort of in a feedback loop where we go back and we have everything embedded all together. So data is the key here. As you've seen, there is a different battery domains. So how do we make sure that all the data are able to communicate with each other and are also be able to interoperate with each other? And what is data? Data, normally we think about that as results of an experiment, but it's not only that. So we have everything that is produced during in the project. So basically from documents, spreadsheets, sort of more conventional, but also we have notebooks, movies, pictures. We have models, scripts, samples, workflows. Basically everything that is produced from the day one of the project until the end. And yes. So then one of the first tasks that we did in the project was to create a data management plan, as in most funding agencies now require. But then we had to cover basically 35 research facilities. We had to cover about 150 different research. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that everybody is doing it? And then we have this publication. If you are interested in how we deal with the data, you should check the supplementary material. Is around 120 pages of data information. But then thanks to that, we were able to produce a figure like this, where you actually can see all the data connections between the different work or battery domains. So we have the infrastructure in the middle, standard and ontologies. I'm going back to that. This is sort of the core of the machinery of the project. And then we have modeling on one side that communicates with the infrastructure. We have artificial intelligence. You can see that gets the data and feeds back the data in the infrastructure. Here, the size of the arrows indicates what sort of it is the volume of the data that are transferred, and the same with more experimental work. And as well, we are taking information from public repositories. So it's not that we are aiming to do everything in the project. We are also taking from wherever is available online. So basically, this is sort of the backbone of the data flow in the project. But how do we get to that? And before that, what do we mean with infrastructures, standards, and ontology? So basically, the infrastructure is what have been developed at EPFL, is based on the Materials Cloud, and is sort of a place where we store all the data. And this can be both AI, modeling, as well as experiments. And this is to be compliant with FAIR procedures, right? Also, an important thing is that we have protected data, we have industrial data. So how do we make sure that the data are accessible for us, but they're also somehow protected because you don't want to share industrial secrets? So what we have is actually two levels, where we have an open repository, where is open source, and then we have a restricted data, where actually our models can run, but where we don't get the raw data, the full bunch of raw data. And then the data storage is sort of accessed through the app stores or through different apps. So the project or the researchers creates app that can talk with the infrastructure and upload the data in infrastructure. Then we have notebooks in order to standardize the procedure, experimental procedures. You can actually see these are all available links where you can take a look at what's happening in the project. And then because of the different domains, we have also implementing an ontology where it's basically a vocabulary on how the data are talking with each other, what we exactly mean when we say a battery, when we say cathode, when we say I don't know, lithium cobalt oxide and so on and so forth. But to create these tables or this overview, what is crucial is actually these data tables that for now are all in Excel files. I will show you later how we are trying to automate it. So here I'm taking an example from one of the modeling work. What we are doing is describing how, what we are actually creating. So we don't care of how, but it's more of what. And that is basically electronic structure calculations. We can give structures, energies, so on and so forth, with which code and so on. So this tells us what is all the data that are creating a single work package. Then we are also looking at what data can we collect from other places and can deliver, and why we are doing that. So here is the case where we create data, modeling data, and we are using for characterization purposes. So it could be that we collect structural parameters to improve our models, or that we deliver structural information to clarify experimental results. So this will actually put a single model or work package in relation with all the rest of the project. So when we then do that, we come out with this kind of overview. I said about the infrastructure before, so this is all fair, and we have, as I say, different level of openness. But our goal now, or our ambition, is to go beyond big map and try to connect all the European battery landscape. And the first way to do it is actually talking with the Battery 2030 Plus, because big map is one of those of the projects involved in the Battery 2030 Plus consortium. So what we are trying to do now is creating data tables also with the other 5 projects that involves sensors, recyclability, and so on and so forth, and see what can be used and how. And you can see, so the core part is big map. We have this is done again all by hand for now, and you can see that some of the modeling could feed information to Eden or But Forever that could actually talk with Spartacus, and you can create a broader landscape for data flow. And our ambition is then also to connect Battery 2030 Plus with other European consortia, BEPA or Batteries Europe, sort of to unify a way that we are dealing with data. And because data, as we heard before, is also the way that we to go for making better models, accelerated research, and so on. But as I said, this is all like done pen and paper. I have several thousands of Excel sheets lying about that, so it's actually not feasible to when you want to make a larger data flow that across basically all the research institutions in Europe and beyond. So what we are trying to do is actually making an ontology for data, and the reason to do that is to make a dynamic data management plan. So I said before, what is an ontology? It's basically creating relations between the different parts of something, in this case of a battery. So you can just, if you say battery, you can have all the information about battery cell, battery pack, electrochemical cell, and so on. So how do we do that? And how do we connect the data ontology with the other available ontologies? So what we will do that is in 2 different levels. First, we create a data ontology. So basically, we tell the project which work package has different partners, what kind of data are producing. And then we connect that with the domain ontology. In this case, it could be BATinfo, that is the battery ontology that we are developing, that tells us when you're talking about DFT data, these are the information that you need. Is forces, is structure, is code, and so on and so forth. And then you can also include or connect it with other ontologies that are European-based, like EMIRI and so on and so forth, or model. So basically what we are trying to do is that we have different levels. We have data for ontology, and then at the new level, we have domain ontology that is all like They should be all connected. And then if we are able to do that, then we are able to create this kind of maps where you can follow the flow of the data and what the data is, and who, first of all, who produced it, what are the parameters, what the data is, what can be connections that maybe you actually don't see just looking in Excel files. Great. So this is what I wanted to show, and these are some acknowledgements, in particular European Union for funding through Big Map and Battery 2030 Plus. All the people that work in the data management plan. For the one of you that have never tried, this is actually a huge group effort. You cannot do. It's not only one person doing that. And then the whole ontology team and the data task force in Battery 2030 Plus.
Thank you very much, Ivano. You made it clear, at least for me, which well, but I'm quite used now to this type of presentation, but I know how much it's important really to understand it. So I think we have some time for questions here. So please.
Thank you. It's a huge work. Thank you for that. Clearly, my question will be: do your work, the ontology, the standards that you're creating, the European will push for making the standard in Europe in terms of the format file for this ontology, it is, and now you transfer the information like that. You know, because we talk about the battery passport, which is, I would say, a layer. What you are doing is the different layer, but do your work is really to push standards there deeper than what we have usually for the battery field.
Yes, so that's what we are trying, because what we are trying to do is actually not only at the big map level, but we have the lowest hanging fruit is to push the standards towards like Battery 2030 Plus. That is already like a consortium of more than 150 partners, or involving around 150 partners. So that means that we are not making standards only for ourselves, and then there is somebody else making their own standards, but we are trying to homogenize these at sort of the European level. Of course, there is also some people that are trying to do the same also in the US and in Singapore and so on. So we are in contact also with them in order to not make two standards that they progress with each other. I know I'm a modeling guy, and if you look at the way that, for example, pseudo potentials have been done in quantum mechanics codes, I mean, everybody they have their own format. So it's we don't want that. We want to try to find a way to converge at some point. And I think that once we are trying to do this, right, where we connect the ontology for data with ontologies that are already available for different domains, that's really the way that we are creating a unified frame or landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much for the answer there. That's very helpful. Okay, so you create the ontology. You have all of these parameters that have to be put in for each thing that I contribute. Do you refuse data that doesn't have all of the information that you want? And is that what standardization actually is? Can you just comment on that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So it's basically like including, let's say you don't have metadata, or you don't have complete metadata, right? So the idea is that when you have a protocol or a standard operating procedure or a notebook, then all the metadata should be there, right? Because if you are sending an experiment through the lab notebook that we have, then you have to fill in all the right task. But I think that what we are trying to do is also include having some kind of filters that if you are missing some of the required information, then will not reject the data, but will tell you, you know, these maybe are less high quality than those because there is something else, or please add more information because these are not reproducible. We are doing that for some of the computational workflows, where you have a first set of data that are required, or information that are required, but then you can also add something more on top that maybe is not, you know, they are important, but they're not so crucial.
Thank you for a very nice presentation. I was wondering, well, actually I have two questions. One is, this is very modeling heavy at the moment, the part that you discussed. How do you go from these models that seem to provide a very good starting point for the design of battery materials to actual synthesis. You want to close this loop. Is there in this project work on that? That is my first question.
Yes, so all of that is actually done here in VP10. So VP10, there is we are developing a closed loop that includes modeling, experimental synthesis, robotic synthesis, AI, and so on. So that is actually one of the core parts of the map.
And so you take the input from the models
Yes,
and use that to come up with certain materials.
Yes, we have, I think mostly it's done at the molecular level. And we had a hackathon a couple of weeks ago just to do that. And this was done involving basically, I think like three or four different groups from infrastructure, modeling, experiments, all working remotely. So it was really like a way to homogenize, including the hackathon itself, was not all sitting in the same spot, but what we want to have is a map that works across different institutions. So it's not that I have to go somewhere to run it, but it can all be done right now.
Thanks. And then the second question, if I may, all the different data formats that you talk about and that you link together here, these individually evolve as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Equipment changes, file formats, so do modeling tools. How do you deal with that within this kind of scope? Because you cover
Yes.
a lot of ground, and it seems like something that you need to keep up all the time in order to keep up with all these developments.
Yes, and that's the main reason why to create a data, or one of the reasons why to create a data ontology, because it was a headache to make this. Imagine if tomorrow there is only one tiny parameter there that changes, right? But if we have a data ontology, then we can go in and change that input from that entry, and that hopefully will a map like that can be sort of self-updated. Because you're right, I mean, a data management is not a static document, something that changes with time. So I hope that the ontology will solve some of that.
I had a question, but you already sort of showed that you're connecting to Osmo, one of the ontologies that my team created. And probably the benefit of all speakers, those ontologies don't only work for software, because here the software of the modeling side was quite heavy. They also work for characterization, and there is a much grander effort, not quite led by the European Modeling Council, but by a team that used to be called European Modeling Ontology, because all ontologies preferably would fall into one that describes all the materials and materials processes. Yeah, thank you. So they recently changed the name to Elementary Multi-Perspective Materials Ontology to remove the European within, but essentially the aim or the ambition of that much grander project, again, many countries and consortia and projects are involved because they feed their own ontologies back into EMO, try to unify all the materials description within one grand ontology that's extensible. And in this way, you know, I guess that can benefit all materials manufacturers, not just the academics that have thought about it. Ontology is a way to simplify things in certain sense, but and they're more than just the metadata. So you explained and you said the metadata may change as input and output between files or software, but the ontologies give relationships. And at the end of the day, in our physical world, we have limited amount of relationships. And again, ontologies can be extended beyond that.
Thank you for the impressive work you are doing. I have just two small questions. When will the Big Map project end? And do you have the Big Map 2 in the pipe? Because European projects are
Yes.
3 or 4 years long.
Yeah, so the Big Map will end in 1.5 years, I think. And
September.
September. Oh, actually less. Yeah, 1 year. September next year. And yes, we are working on it.
On the second, yeah, there is an open call for the second round, which
yes,
which is
due in September.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the deadline is the 6th of September.
6th of September. Yes.
Okay, I think we have to stop this discussion here. So thanks again, Ivano, for this very impressive work and for your clear presentation. So okay, thanks again, Jens. It was really very, very interesting. So I would like now to go to the last presentation before we will go for a break. So I invite on stage Simon Stier, who is the head of digital transformation at Fraunhofer ISC in Würzburg, if I'm not mistaken.
It was Control I, no? Control I for linking. Is it? Someone said Control Windows? E. Okay.
Okay, yeah, my name is Simon Stier and I'm from the Fraunhofer ISC, which is a broad-based material research institute. So not focused on a specific materials type. And I, for myself, I'm both computer scientist and material scientist. As a consequence, I'm there in charge of the digital transformation. As a starter, I want to begin with the problem, but I think we already hear a lot about it. So the problem is that we lose a lot of knowledge every day because we have no suitable tools to express it. And so this is one problem we already heard, is that we use data formats that are not self-described. And we also have a lot of ideas that we only express in human language. And that's very hard to access by machines at all. And so AI is a great tool, but if we want to get from our raw data or from our raw ideas to algorithms, to AI, we usually have a great effort to structure it and to make it accessible. And normally we do that just for a limited case, not on a full and broad range. So we specialize on a specific process, as also Jens showed us. And then we have a complete working tool chain. But in general, it's very hard to make this full spectrum. And of course, if we do so, AI itself is also a complex process. And if we really want to understand what AI does, we need also to document what was the data that goes in and what was the data that goes out. So we can also reproduce AI research. So we at Fraunhofer, we address this, and I think that's quite similar to the picture that Wolfgang showed us in the morning. We try to address this problem on different levels. So we are active on the shop floor and the lab, where we want to automate things, as already discussed by others. But we also of course use robots, but we also focus on the human in the lab, because he is the centerpiece. He controls the processes and he has the ideas. That's the important stuff. And to integrate both, we need a hybrid information system that's capable to be human operable and machine readable. And of course, it's a challenge to realize something like that. And of course, some virtual machines are our algorithms, machine learning, and AI, also virtual devices that want to access information. And to connect everything to the outer space, we need a common language that are ontologies. So what we do is we build such a hybrid information system we call Open Semantic Lab. So, and this is an idea that we create a central meta platform solution. So it's focused on meta. So it's not the tool for everything, but it's the glue that keeps everything together. So it is a machine readable and AI readable structure. It's open source and it's built for adaptability. So it's very generic, but it can be adapted to any problems. That's the basic concept. So on what do we focus? So we have in the core, of course, a knowledge base, so we as humans can express our ideas, but we can also use an ELN, electronic notebook, to make very unstructured experiments. So at the very starting of any idea, we have no structure, we just write something down. But of course, we need also inventory management. I do not only mean materials and devices, also algorithms are an important inventory. We need to know which digital tools are capable to transform specific information, and so on. Of course, we can gradually go to SOPs, standard operating procedures, that force us to quality standard. And also they describe precisely where machines and which algorithms are involved in the whole process. Of course, not specialized in the platform itself, but connected to other tools. We can attach to data analytics, machine interfaces, time series databases, and dashboards to provide something visual and useful for the operators. So the operators are, of course, not only laboratory and technicians, but it's the whole chain of people that are involved and dealing with complex processes and data. So in the lab, we generate data scientists analyze this data, and common scientists create knowledge out of data. Engineers use knowledge to create new devices. And some of these devices, of course, go back to the lab and create a new measurement procedures of tomorrow. The model that is behind the idea is therefore very process-centric. So processes, it's kind of philosophical, are manipulating everything in our world. And that's of course materials or parts, and it's energy and information. And so we transform these objects. And by using this very simple view on our world, we can express the most important transformations that are manufacturing and synthesis. It's a material transformation. The information to material, that's automation. We have measurements, that's extracting information out of material. And we have pure digital visual processes that are simulations, AI, data analytics, and so on. So it's very basic, but all important processes are covered. So the idea is, how can we contribute from others in dealing with such processes in general, especially in the material research? So what our concept is that we have templates, and not only a template to structure data, but also to visualize data and also to have an interface to the data. So we always, we need an API, that's the machine interface. We need forms and views that are the human interfaces to a particular part of our knowledge graph. So for every substructure of our knowledge graph, here in different colors shown, we need a specific template. And this template helps us as humans to provide our data. It helps machines to have a specific interface to add data. And it also shows us in a specific form how the data looks like. And that's, of course, highly depends on the actual data. And so if you do this for every atomistic step in our process, and I think there is a limited amount of atomistic steps in our world and also in the lab. So for example, to measure the volume of a liquid, that is an atomistic step. Or to make an image processing and extract features, that's an atomistic process. So if you define every atomistic step, you can also define very complexes just by combining those steps. And the best part of it is that we are not alone. So at our own institute or in other institutes, we have different processes using the same atomistic steps. And of course, we can share the same steps. So if we share a process, a part in process chain with other people, we can directly give them our templates, and they have the same view on this sub step, and they have the same interfaces. And of course, This enables also the compatibility of the resulting knowledge graph in the background of every partner that is involved. Okay, I think this was very theoretical. So just providing also one example from my side, we applied it to also a battery research project that's called KI, that's German for AI Probat, where we want to manufacture battery cells and collect every single piece of information in a semantic knowledge graph. So we have a workflow from separation of cells and the preparation, drying, stacking, filling, formation, and end-of-line characterization. And that's typically it's a only partial automated process. So there are humans that go from machine to machine, and they decide what is the next step and what are the next parameter set to test. And what so our tool enables researchers here that they can, in the first way, they can define a machine readable process specification. So not only to get clear about themselves, what is the actual process, but also to make it machine readable and comparable to other processes. And it includes, of course, also our inventory of materials and devices and so on. The lab operators are interactively guided by this specified workflow. So the workflow generates views and forms to guide the lab operator through the process. And the machines, so by the input of the operator, he can involve machines in the process, and they know precisely where they can attach to the process and provide their data, or they receive their parameters to control an individual process step and push back the measurement results. And what the result is, that is a consistent knowledge graph that can be accessed and extended by machine learning. So there are humans that providing data and there are machines providing data, but the result is the same, no matter who is in charge of providing the specific information. I will also try to open that in the web. So here you can see our web page. Yeah, it's not fully. And there you can have a look. It's public. Most parts are public. You can have a look at our results, and you can, for example, explore our process definition and also our also our expert knowledge expression. And most important part I want to show here is one example knowledge graph created by this platform. So it takes some time to expand because it's, of course, it shows every parameter that is collected during the process in a graph. So we need some seconds to let him expand. So every step that we take is some cluster of information. So we have the separation where we collect images of every electrode. And then we have, for example, drying where we collect the machine data during the drying. And at the end, we have end-of-line characterization where we retrieve the actual battery performance parameters. And this graph looks a lot of different, like the pure SQL structure Yen showed to us. But it also looks very complex. But if we zoom in, we also are able as a human to identify, for example, that there are images of our electrodes during the separation. And for example, on other positions, we have physical parameters like the drying temperature in this graph. And you can imagine that it's for an AI, it's much easier, for example, to correlate a specific defect on the electrode that's visible in the image, to correlate it with an end-of-line performance that is maybe just shown in an export file from the battery tester. So the machine can go back in time for every process result and retrieve every single piece of information that is existing for this product, and can of course focus on the correlations. And I think that's the idea. So humans have good ideas what typical correlations are, so they can guide the machine also to most important correlations, but machines, algorithms are able to access this information seamlessly without any additional effort from researchers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. One question, and then we go for a coffee break.
So how much of the work that's going on at Fraunhofer ISC are you already capturing in this sort of scheme?
Of course, that's always a good question. So the truth is, we are only at particular projects at this scale. So we are not, as a full institute, yet able to do that. But of course, this is also a transformation process. But our key, that's also connected to your saying that young people are more attracted to modern approaches. But here we have also the change to integrate people that don't want to go full in automatic and digital tools. So of course they have to fill out a form. That's the base. But so they can also contribute to knowledge graph, not only full automated machines and computer scientists.
I think there was another question from Thierry. No?